I'm a 26-year-old woman, and I've been married to my 29-year-old husband for almost 3 years. Since the beginning, it's been obvious that his family never liked me. He has twin sisters who are 23 and a younger brother who's 21, and none of them have ever made me feel welcome. Same with my mother-in-law. I could never figure out exactly what I did wrong, but I've always tried to make peace. I just wanted to build a good relationship with them, so this year, I decided to throw a surprise 50th birthday party for my mother-in-law. My husband told me not to bother. He said if they don't like me, I shouldn't force it and definitely shouldn't go out of my way. But I'm the kind of person who hates tension. I need things to be good. And I thought maybe, just maybe, this gesture would help break the ice. I started planning a few days ago and even asked his siblings to help. They brushed it off and told me to go ahead if I really wanted to do it, so I booked a reservation at one of her favorite restaurants, the one she used to go to with her late husband, and paid up front for all the food and decorations. I took care of every single detail myself and even made sure it matched her specific tastes, because I know how particular she can be. I also reached out to my husband to make sure I invited the right people, some of her closest friends and family. I paid for everything. I organized the entire thing from top to bottom, while her own children sat back and didn't contribute anything at all. Not time, not effort, not money. The night before her birthday, we went to visit her. My husband didn't want to, but I felt it was important. When we got there, her kids were already there and looked surprised to see us, but said nothing. After some casual chit-chat, I told her we were expecting her at the restaurant the next evening because we had something planned. She smiled and thanked my husband, but he told her that I was the one who planned everything. The second he said that, her expression totally changed. I told her about the guest list, the food, and the decor, hoping she'd see how much love I'd put into it. But then she gave me this cold, fake smile and said that while she appreciated the effort, she wouldn't be coming. I was stunned. I asked her why, and she looked right at me and said she wanted her birthday to be special and family only. Then she added that while her friends were like family to her, I wasn't. She didn't consider me part of the family, and preferred if I stayed away. I was speechless. My husband just sat there in shock, and his siblings, they looked like they were about to laugh. That's when something inside me snapped. I stood up and told her that she could go to hell, and if she dared show up at the party, I'd have security escort her out. The smug grins disappeared real fast. She called me cruel and cold, and I just laughed. I told her she had no right to throw that at me after the way she treated me. She tried to talk me down, to get me to back off, but I told her straight up that she didn't deserve anything nice from me and that the party was off. She started crying, maybe to guilt-trip me, but I didn't care anymore. I was too angry to feel bad. On the way home, I tried canceling the reservation, but it was too late. Everything had been paid for. My husband didn't say much, just that I did the right thing, then went out for a smoke. He's not very vocal about his family stuff and usually avoids drama, especially since I'd ignored his advice from the beginning. Since everything was already booked, I canceled all the original invites even, though it annoyed a lot of the guests, but they were mostly her friends, and frankly, I didn't care anymore. Instead, I invited my own friends. I even got my husband to bring some of his. We quickly got rid of the decorations and made the night our own. We had an amazing time. Later, that night, I posted some pictures. That's when my sister-in-law texted me, saying I'd ruined her mom's birthday, and called me selfish for using the venue for myself, especially since it meant so much to her. But honestly, I don't feel bad, not one bit. I paid for everything. I tried to be kind, and she disrespected me in the most personal, humiliating way. I think I did what anyone would do. After struggling for years, my husband finally found success. He went from barely getting by to building a flourishing business. I was so proud of him, but unfortunately, the more he achieved, the more his family began to spiral into entitlement and laziness. As his income grew, so did their dependence on him, but he never spoke up. He believed he owed them that much. In his mind, it was what his late father would have wanted. They also treated every girlfriend he had like a threat because they believed anyone else in his life would distract him from what they considered his only purpose, taking care of them. So when he and I got serious, they hated it. I wasn't someone they could just mistreat and scare off. I stood my ground, and when it became clear I wasn't going anywhere, they started getting hostile, trying to poison him against me. It didn't work. There were a lot of fights behind the scenes while we were dating conversations. I only found out about later where they told him to leave me, but he stood firm. Eventually, they started emotionally distancing themselves, hoping to guilt trip him. Still, they kept asking him for money. It was all a twisted manipulation tactic, but it didn't break us. Years later, we're still happily married. After the birthday fiasco, my husband told me that not only did his sister try to get me through text, but his mom also called him to do the same. She tried to manipulate him into leaving me, claiming I had insulted her and ruined her birthday. That was his breaking point. He finally said enough was enough. I'm still stunned that his family treated him that way, even after he had supported them for years. I've lost whatever respect I had for them. They're just greedy, entitled people. I'm beyond glad I didn't let them push me out of his life like they tried to. They were never interested in his happiness, only in what they could take from him. The truth is, I never cared about his money. I loved the man, not his paycheck. Now that I know what he's been through, I'm amazed. He kept all of it from me for so long just to protect my feelings. I had always tried to build a bond with my in-laws, but he knew it was never going to happen. Looking back, I realize he saw all of this coming. I think he's making the right choice. His family needs to be cut off. They're selfish, manipulative, and have no gratitude for the one person who carried them for so long. Earlier today, my husband finally made the call to his mother. He told her that unless she and his siblings were ready to change their ways, he didn't want to hear from them again. And he made it very clear that he would no longer support them financially. They needed to get jobs and grow up. As expected, the response was pure chaos. Even with the phone on regular volume, I could hear his mother screaming. It was an ugly fight. She, of course, blamed everything on me, saying I manipulated him, ruined their family, and turned him cold. The irony of her talking about manipulation was almost funny. My husband did his best to defend me. He told her straight up that his siblings were grown adults and it was embarrassing that they still relied on him for everything. His mother didn't take that well. She accused him of letting success go to his head and said I was clearly encouraging him to abandon them. It was classic emotional blackmail, plain and simple. When I saw my husband getting overwhelmed, eyes watering, fists clenched, I stepped in. I told her his mind was made up, and if they didn't start treating us with respect, then they could consider themselves out of our lives forever. I hung up and immediately muted every notification on his phone so he could breathe. An hour later, we sat down to watch a movie, trying to calm ourselves, but the peace didn't last. After the movie, my husband got back to work, and I checked my phone. I had dozens of missed calls from his mom, and my inbox was flooded with the most disgusting messages from his siblings, curse words, insults, blaming me for everything. It didn't surprise me. I took screenshots just in case, and moved on. I was replying to work emails when she called again. This time, I accidentally answered. She unleashed everything she had on me, calling me manipulative, selfish, a gold digger trying to ruin her son. I didn't say a word. Once she finished, I calmly told her that everything she accused me of was exactly what she herself had been doing. I said, before pointing fingers at others, maybe she should take a hard look in the mirror. Then I added that I was glad my husband was finally cutting out freeloaders like her and her kids, because they didn't deserve a man like him. Then I hung up. After that, I blocked her and his siblings everywhere, text, calls, social media, everything. I wasn't going to let them worm their way back into our lives. I haven't told my husband yet about that last phone call. He doesn't need any more stress. But if they try anything again, I'll tell him everything and take legal action. If I have to, they've lost the right to disturb our peace. And sadly, I don't think this is over. I know his mother. She won't stop until we completely shut her out. But I'm ready. This time, they're not messing with my husband. Not anymore. The very next day, just when we thought things might calm down, my mother-in-law showed up at our front door with all 3 of her grown kids. They were all furious and demanding an explanation. She wanted to know why we were cutting them off. My husband looked stunned, and I could see the stress building up in his face. They tried to tell me to leave the room, that I had no right to be there because it was a family matter. I told them they were standing in my home, under my roof, and they had no right to tell me where I could or couldn't be. Then the real assault began. They ganged up on my husband, calling him selfish, saying he was turning his back on his family, and that he was doing it all to please me. The words they used were cruel, accusing him of being cold. claiming he was abandoning them to chase some fantasy life with me. It was ugly, but I stayed. I didn't flinch, because this time, he wasn't alone. My husband was quiet, his face red, and his eyes brimming in. I could tell he was on the verge of breaking down. That was my cue to step in. He's a sensitive man, especially when it comes to the people he loves. Even though they treated him like a bank, he truly cared about his family. He couldn't fight them. He couldn't defend himself against their lies and manipulation, but I could. I gently told him to take a breath and let me handle it. Then I turned to his family and told them to leave. They were upsetting him, and, frankly, they were pissing me off. But most of all, they were making my husband cry. That was unforgivable. My mother-in-law wasn't having it. She snapped that I had no right to boss her around in her son's home and claimed she could stay as long as she wanted, and she kept talking at my husband, completely ignoring how devastated he looked. She didn't care about his emotions. She only cared about the money. Her voice was laced with disappointment and disgust as she told him she hadn't raised him to be like this and that choosing me over his real family was shameful. Then his brother jumped in, saying my husband's only responsibility was to them, that I was just a gold digger and didn't deserve someone like him anyway. That was it. I lost it. I looked them dead in the eye and said exactly what I thought. They were a bunch of lazy, entitled leeches who were living off my husband's hard work because they couldn't do a single thing for themselves. If anyone fit the definition of a gold digger twid was them. They hovered around him for money and then turned on him the second he chose to protect his peace. And now, here they were, trying to tear him down. They fell silent, completely stunned. They had nothing to say, and while they were still trying to figure out how to respond, I told them to get out right then, or I'd call the police and report them for trespassing. That shook them. They finally turned to leave, but not before my mother-in-law got in one last jab. She said, if my husband's father were alive, he'd be heartbroken to see his own son treating his family this way. That was low even for her. She played the grief card, one last emotional dagger, to try and guilt-trip him, but the damage was already done. By the time they drove away, my husband was completely shattered. The second the door shut behind them, he broke down sobbing uncontrollably. I held him for hours. It was devastating to watch, and honestly, I wished I'd never tried to throw that birthday party in the first place, but maybe it was a blessing in disguise because it exposed what needed to be exposed. After they left, I blocked every single number and social profile linked to his family. I made sure they couldn't reach either of us. Once he calmed down, I told him we should look into hiring a lawyer. We both knew this wasn't over. His family would go to any length to squeeze money out of him, and we needed to protect ourselves. And we were right. Just days later, we received a legal notice from his mother. She was suing him, demanding a ridiculous amount of money in compensation, claiming he had stolen from the inheritance his father left behind to start his company. It was an outright lie. My husband never touched a dime of that money. He built everything he had from the ground up. He's self-made. Hearing them make such vile accusations after all he did for them was infuriating. I was livid. Worse, the legal mess caught the attention of people in his industry. His business started taking a hit because of the rumors. His reputation was being dragged through the mud by his own family. It was stupid and short-sighted on their part. Thankfully, after 2 exhausting weeks of paperwork, investigation, and legal back and forth, we proved they were lying. Not a single dollar had ever been taken. And now, they have to pay us a massive fine for defamation and trying to sabotage his career. Poetic justice. Word got out. And now, the rest of the extended family wants nothing to do with them. His mother and siblings have been completely ostracized. And as for those 3 jobless parasites, they're finally scrambling to find actual work. No more free ride. It's about time. My husband and I are finally at peace. We're happy. There's a calm in our home that we haven't felt in a long time. I intend to protect it at all costs. They're out of our lives for good. And honestly, that's exactly where they belong.